Hello, everybody. Bethany Dotson, relationship coach and trauma sensitive somatic therapist for high achieving, career driven women over the age of 40 who are struggling to date, feel good about themselves, and might be recovering from a narcissistic relationship and still feel stuck in that process. I'm going live on a new streaming platform that I've never used before. So I am hoping that this works, and I can't see comments. So we're just going to roll with it. Today, I want to talk about the independence paradox and why strong, driven, ambitious women lose themselves in love and tend to choose the wrong partners, and why there is this stark dichotomy of being polished and successful in your career but then having a broken picker in this area of your life. And I want to first start by saying right off the bat that there are always subconscious reasons behind this pattern. And the primary one is believing on some level that you are not good enough as you are, believing on some level that you are not lovable just as you are. A lot of women who find themselves in these predicaments experienced a childhood that invalidated her, or it didn't have to be a traumatic childhood at all. It can be perfectly normal, but they received some kind of messaging early in life that in order to be loved, they had to be good. They had to win approval. They had to, they learned through experience or being verbally told or reinforced that being good meant you're worthy of love now. And so that messaging could have shown up in a multitude of ways in your childhood. I personally grew up in a pretty chaotic childhood, and I learned because of my dad's violent temper that this says uploading. I hope it's working. Because of my dad's explosive temper and his mental health issues, I learned that I needed to be small and invisible and not do anything that would potentially upset him, that would lead to him having a spell. And that was something I learned at 3 or 4 and continued on in my life. So whatever your experience was in childhood, the point I'm trying to drive home is that this dichotomy of I've got it all together in my career and in basically every other part of my life, but I keep winding up with emotional abusers, men who haven't done any work on themselves, men who are emotionally unavailable, men who are emotionally immature, men who lack. There are some dogs barking in the background. Okay, we're going to go with it. Men who lack your level of ambition. So that's the fundamental root cause. I want to talk about 3 other things here as well to kind of help you discern why this continues to happen for you and give you the initial steps/insights that are going to help you undo this pattern. So the first thing is that a lot of successful women and driven women have the mindset that I am going to make it work. I've learned that working harder gets me what I want, whether that was you learn how to do that in college, in high school, in your career, you get challenges in your career, you don't know how to handle them. And, you might feel uncertain, scared, annoyed, frustrated at first, but then you put your problem solver hat on and you learn how to fix it. And then you get the reward. You get the dopamine hit from solving that problem. This will show up in your love life because solving problems, making I'm going to make it work mindset often leads to, in your personal life, especially with romantic partners, I'm going to make excuses for this person. Why? Why is that? Why do we do that? Number one, in your career, which you've probably learned that you get the most benefit, reward, approval, sense of belonging from your career. That's the thing that seems to like bolster your self-esteem and your self-worth the most. You're going to apply the same strategies that you use there to get approval in your personal relationship choices. So making it work in your career very often looks like making excuses for somebody's inconsistent signals, their mixed signals, their inconsistent behavior, their bad behavior, and feeling sorry for them. So what the other reasoning behind why you make excuses for somebody is that a romantic relationship usually brings higher emotional stakes. They say that there's nothing like a romantic partner or your family, truly the people that are closest to you in an emotionally intimate capacity, that are going to bring all of your stuff up to the surface. So when you find yourself, especially if you have neglected your romantic life, you want a partner, but you've had so much disappointment and you've made so many wrong choices in the past, you don't trust yourself anymore. So naturally, people neglect that area of their life. If that's you, you're probably going to be more prone to making excuses for somebody just from the sheer fact that you don't have a lot of practice yet in making healthier choices in your love life. And if you have neglected your love life for some time and you suddenly get back out there and find that you are with emotionally unavailable people again, it's not a reflection on you and that you're unworthy. It just means that you have patterns in your psychology that still need to be resolved. And the good news is that there's a way to resolve that. It just takes a willingness to be a little uncomfortable initially and to continue to step out of your comfort zone in your personal relationships. The second point I want to make is that a lot of times when we find ourselves with successful careers and being driven and having big goals and dreams and getting, being used to getting what we want in that area of our life, when we come to our love lives, which is usually an area where we've repeatedly failed or sacrificed ourselves or given up parts of ourselves to make that work, there is a hidden benefit of being the one person in their life that is the understanding one. There's an article that was published in Newsweek several years ago that really highlighted the science, the neuroscience behind why successful women get into abusive relationships and why successful women specifically tend to have broken partner pickers. And one of those was being a problem solver, right? Wearing the problem solver hat that she wears in her career to her relationship. And that problem solving hat turns into making excuses for that person. And the second big trait that they have is they get a benefit from being the patient person in their partner's life, the compassionate one, the one who's understanding. Emotional abusers and manipulators lead relationships, especially in the beginning, with a victim mentality. Pay attention when you're dating somebody new. Are they talking, are they seeming to blame the downfall of every relationship on what the other person did to them? So they lead with this. And this might register on your radar as a red flag, but because of those subconscious beliefs and potentially abandonment anxiety that is also subconscious. If you had abandonment wounds earlier in life, this is going to follow you around in your love life and in most of your interpersonal relationships. We get the benefit of I'm finally the understanding one. I'm going to show them that there is a different way. And we get like a boost, an ego boost from believing that we can be the one that is the partner who's going to listen to them, the one who's going to set the pattern straight with them. And we get a false sense of security from buying into that belief. And that false sense of security of being the understanding one often comes because we've been let down by other people. People have left us, people have rejected us, people have abandoned us in the past. So that's the second point that I want to make. There is a hidden benefit of being the understanding one in someone's life who's struggling or who isn't getting their act together. And I want to draw the distinction here because there's a fine line of discernment. Yes, we always want to be understanding and compassionate in a romantic relationship, but there's a line that needs to be drawn. And where does that mean that you are enabling that person's dysfunctional behavior and losing yourself at the same time? Where does that mean that you are making excuses for that person to prevent yourself from being abandoned or hurt again? So discernment is a really, really big practice. And it's something I work extremely diligently on with my clients, because if you've had traumatizing relationships, most likely, even long after you've left that, you're going to be living in a heightened state of anxiety, like a heightened state of fight or flight, always being chronically busy. You're going to feel like you never have enough time in your life. You're going to feel like constantly this like nagging sense of being under pressure. That is a signal. Those are signals that your nervous system is still kind of trapped in that state of fight or flight. And this leads me to the third point about why successful women find themselves in low quality relationships, despite knowing better, despite seeing the red flags. And this goes back to the big point that I made earlier, your subconscious programming. Your nervous system and your body have, unbeknownst to you, associated love or relationships or chaos as being normal. And here's the real interesting fact. Women who are successful and who are leading departments and who are raising children solo and who are, dealing with a manipulative, narcissistic ex-spouse and custody and all that kind of stuff, these women tend to have a higher threshold for stress tolerance, meaning they can handle more. And on one hand, that's good, because when you are a leader in work, when you have big goals and dreams, it requires you to be able to handle a lot. You need to be able to problem solve a lot. You need to be able to think quickly on your feet, make fast decisions. However, the downside of having a high stress tolerance is that often your high stress tolerance came from something or things that happened in your childhood, experiences that you had in your childhood, conditioned your nervous system to recognize chaos or high levels of stress as just normal. And this is why you might find yourself high achieving and driven in other areas of your life, because that matches what your subconscious and your nervous system are comfortable with. And there's some benefit there. It'll win you approval, but it's usually not sustainable if it's coming from that subconscious place. And the other downside, obviously, is that if you have a high tolerance for stress and your nervous system has subconsciously mapped love and personal relationships to be chaotic, you're going to find yourself dating partners who match that. They are going to be inconsistent. You are going to be questioning, should I send this second text or not? They are going to blow hot and cold, because it's going that behavior causes you to suddenly feel stressed and feel anxious and get all in your head and overthink things. And then, all of a sudden when they reach out and you're like, I was overthinking it, blah, blah, blah. And then here we go. The excuse making comes along and we get that rush of dopamine and serotonin. It becomes like an addictive pattern. I will liken this to, I don't know if you guys saw, there was a crime documentary on Netflix several years ago, American Murderer. And if you know the story, I won't give it away. Don't watch it alone on a Saturday night like I did. But the story is basically a husband ends up, they look like the picture perfect family on the outside, but the husband winds up murdering his wife and daughters. And it's just an extremely unfortunate, sad story. But a psychologist did a her analysis on his behavior. And what she discovered was that he was really unhappy and had been unhappy in that marriage for some time. Obviously, that doesn't make an excuse for murdering your family. But what she noticed was a very inherent human trait that we all have, which is the trait of trespassing our own boundaries. And this psychologist who analyzed his behavior was also a specialist in addiction recovery. And she remarked that people who trespass their own boundaries tend to, it's like you tell a lie or a white lie, a small lie, and then you have to continue telling lies to keep covering up that one white lie that you told. When we trespass our own boundaries, in this example, when we make excuses for somebody's inconsistent behavior, it's like we receive a little bit of relief. We make excuses for somebody's behavior, and that gives us a temporary sense of relief. But what we're really avoiding is the truth on the inside that this person may not be right for me. And when you avoid the deeper truth that this person may not be right for you, and you soften that truth with making an excuse for them, you're trespassing your own boundaries. And her point was that when we trespass our own boundaries, specifically in romantic relationships, we usually destroy our lives or parts of our lives. And this murder case was an extreme example of that. But I thought that was fascinating. And I bring it up here because I want you, a lot of times when we identify as a woman with a broken picker, we tend to make the problem people out there. There's a lack of quality men in my area. Men my age are usually too jaded. Men my age are too set in their ways. Men my age haven't done any work on themselves. There's a lot of broken men out. We make the problem the other person. And that it's like, it's a temporary relief. It's like, oh, well, I don't really need to look at myself that much, because the truth is that there's just a lack of quality people in my area. And if that's you, I really want you to reconsider believing that and continuing to think that, because at the end of the day, the common denominator is yourself and your subconscious programming. And the stuff that you learned and witnessed and experienced and felt in childhood is the map that is what's driving your choices today in love. So how do you overcome this? The first part is recognizing that you are ready to overcome it. People who are ready to do something differently about their relationship choices usually have a heightened state of urgency, and life circumstances gives them that heightened state of urgency. So maybe you're just out of another toxic relationship after you spent 5 years in therapy and you thought you were doing a lot better and you thought you were ready to date, and bam, you ignored the red flags again. It happened again. Oh my gosh. That would be somebody who is typically ready to make change. Maybe you've been out of your marriage for several years. You went to therapy. You've read a lot of books. You listen to podcasts like this, but you still, and like otherwise, life looks really great. Your career is going good. Your kids are doing pretty good. Friendships are doing pretty good. You're traveling. Like really, like when you step back and look at your life looks pretty awesome. And for the most part, you feel pretty awesome about your life, except you can't shake this nagging sense of stuckness. That is also an indicator that your patterns are the foundation for your life choices and not the healed part of you. And then finally, what makes somebody typically ready, and there are many things that can make somebody ready to do the work, but this is just what I've seen after several years and thousands of people, is having some type of milestone, reaching some type of milestone in your life. Maybe your kids recently left to go off to college and you're now completely an empty nester, and you have maybe you believe, now I can finally focus on myself, right? Because if we have kids, we tend to make our kids or an ex-partner the priority while we continue to put ourselves last on the priority list. Or maybe it's a birthday. Maybe you've reached 55 or 45 or 40 or whatever that number is for you. And you're kind of realizing, like, facing the fact, like, wow, I've spent my whole life like this. That realization is daunting and is extremely uncomfortable. But most people don't change until they've reached a level of discomfort with themselves and their life circumstances. They get to a point where they're fed up with themselves and they can't keep doing it anymore. That is usually the point when somebody is actually ready to do change, to transform their patterns. Second thing is to ideally employ a method in your healing that is more proven in research to be effective for complex trauma. Complex trauma is what happens in the walls of a interpersonal or intimate relationship. Most people aren't traumatized in a car accident or in a war zone. They are traumatized by the people who are closest to them. Relational trauma, somatic therapy, internal family systems, some variations of EMDR are highly beneficial for healing this type of relational trauma. And then lastly, you need to take action. This is where I see most people fail. They don't take action. They go to therapy for many years. They receive a lot of insights. They feel a lot better, but they're not taking any action on what they're learning. They're either avoiding dating, still feeling afraid of dating, believing that they need more time, they need to be readier first, they need to lose more weight first, they need to wait until their kids go off to school, they need to wait. They prolong that because it's scary, naturally so. But what happens is that whenever we're in an unknown scenario in our lives, like dating, there's a heightened state of uncertainty. When we're in a heightened state of uncertainty, we default to patterns that we've used for survival in the past. And if your pattern of relationships in the past has looked like making excuses for somebody, ignoring red flags, doubting yourself, making yourself small, learning to be good because that's what you learned how to do when you were younger, that is most likely what's going to continue to happen. So making different choices and taking different actions in the moment, in real life scenarios where you want to cave and go back to your old ways, is the biggest and most fundamental shift that needs to happen, not once or twice, but on a consistent daily basis. And this is something that we work very intimately with and regularly with clients inside of Break the Cycle. So if this video resonated with you, if you identify as somebody who's always had big goals and dreams, and maybe your big goals and dreams were born out of wanting to escape an unfavorable childhood, and you now find yourself, no matter how successful you are in your career, still feeling like you've got a broken partner picker, and your choices in men, it's like the same thing, different face. And you've had therapy, you've listened, you've read books, you've read all the stuff, you've listened to podcasts, like you're into personal development, but this one area of your life is still the thorn in your side that is like the mystery box that you can't solve. Then the first step would be to check out the free masterclass where I go over the specific 5 shifts you need to commit to in order to breaking this pattern in your life. You can find that at bethanydotson.com/replay. And if you'd like to have an exploratory conversation about whether or not we are a good fit to help you overcome relational trauma, rediscover feel happy every day, feel more confident, feel more comfortable in your skin, feel more accepting of yourself, feel more at peace, whether you are recently out of a narcissistic relationship or you've been out for a while, but your life still feels like chaos because there's a part of you that is operating that way. Despite having it all together, you still feel chaotic on the inside. Then I invite you to book a free discovery session. Go to bethanydotson.com/talk, and we will have a very honest conversation. We're going to explore your patterns a little bit more in depth in that call. And we're also going to explore, most importantly, what it is that you want, and probably stretch your belief and challenge those beliefs on what you want and what you believe is possible for you, and help you get really emotionally connected to a compelling future for yourself. And if we feel confident that we can help you overcome your specific patterns and help you reach your emotional well-being goals and the goals that you identify in that call, and your love life goals, then we'll talk about what it looks like to work together. And if we don't feel like we are the best solution for you, then we're going to point you in the direction of someone who can help you. And maybe that looks like sticking with what you're doing for a little while longer, or giving you a prerequisite assignment about, how to reach the level of readiness, right? Addressing the subconscious fears that you might have about changing. So again, that link is bethanydotson.com/talk. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you next week. Take care.